By the middle of July, you probably don't think much about wasps. One might drift past your patio table. Another might land on your glass for a second, then disappear again. They're part of summer. Nothing unusual. Then, almost without warning, something changes. The same backyard, the same table, the same flowers, the same afternoon. But suddenly there aren't 1 or 2 wasps. There are 10, 12, maybe 20. They land on every drink, every plate, every piece of fruit. You haven't changed anything, so why does your backyard suddenly feel completely different? The answer doesn't start at your picnic table. It started weeks earlier, inside a colony you never knew existed. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why the exact same backyard can feel perfectly safe in July and become genuinely dangerous by September. Not because wasps suddenly become angry, but because something inside their society changes so dramatically that the insects visiting your garden are no longer behaving like the same animals you saw only a few weeks before. Welcome to Hidden Nature. Tonight, we're uncovering one of the most misunderstood seasonal changes in the natural world, and why millions of people experience it every year without ever realizing what's actually happening. If wasps suddenly seem to appear around your backyard every September, the story actually began months earlier. Long before you noticed a single one fertilized queen crawled out of her winter hiding place completely alone. No workers, no nest, no protection, just one insect carrying the future of an entire colony. She began collecting tiny fibers from weathered fences, old sheds, dead branches, even the wood around your yard if it happened to be nearby. Mixed with her saliva, those fibers became paper. Not the kind we write on, but a remarkably strong building material. One small chamber became 5, 5 became 20, 20 became hundreds. Inside every paper cell, a larva began to grow. And this is where the story takes a turn almost nobody expects. Adult wasps are famous for hunting, but almost nothing they catch is actually for themselves. All summer long, they spend their days catching caterpillars, flies, beetle larvae, and other insects, not to eat, but to feed the young waiting inside the nest. The larvae consume the protein, and then they give something back. Tiny droplets of sweet, sugar-rich liquid. The workers drink it directly from the mouths of the larvae. For most of the summer, that nursery is the colony's only reliable source of sugar. It's one of nature's strangest partnerships. The adults feed the next generation, and the next generation quietly feeds the adults, which explains something you've probably seen yourself. Back in June, the wasp hovering around your barbecue usually isn't interested in your soda at all. It already has dessert waiting back home. Late summer arrives, almost without anyone noticing. The queen lays her last eggs. At first, nothing seems different. The workers are still hunting, still repairing the nest, still bringing food home. But inside, the nursery is slowly falling silent. One by one, the last larvae finish growing and leave their paper cells. And then, the sweetest part of the colony disappears. All summer long, those hungry larvae had been feeding the adults tiny droplets of sugary liquid. Now, there are no hungry mouths left. No more sweet reward. The candy shop has closed. For the first time in months, every worker has to find sugar for herself. Imagine nearly 2,000 wasps, all beginning the same search at almost exactly the same time. Not because they suddenly became more aggressive. Not because the colony changed its mind. Because the food they had depended on all summer is simply gone. And that's the moment everything changes. Fruit, soda cans, ice cream, picnics, your backyard. Nothing about those places changed overnight. The wasps did. You've probably heard the story. Every autumn, people say exactly the same thing. The wasps are drunk. They've been eating fermented fruit. That's why they're flying strangely. That's why they're bothering everyone. It's a memorable explanation, but it isn't the real one. Researchers who study social wasps don't describe late summer behavior as intoxication. They describe it as a colony suddenly searching for sugar. Watch a wasp at a picnic table in June. It might inspect your food for a moment, then fly away. Watch one in September, and it behaves very differently. Not confused, not clumsy, purposeful. It checks the soda can, then the watermelon, then somebody's ice cream, almost as if it's working through a checklist. That's not what a drunk animal looks like. It's what a hungry one looks like. All summer long, the workers were fed inside the nest by the larvae they were raising. Now the nursery is gone, the sugar is gone, and for the first time in their lives, every worker has to find it alone. That's what happened at that picnic table. Nothing about the food changed. The colony did. The internal food source it had depended on since spring had suddenly disappeared. Your lunch didn't create the problem. It simply replaced what the colony had just lost. Sometimes another surprise follows. One wasp finds your drink. A few minutes later, another arrives. Then another. People often imagine the first wasp somehow called the rest. The reality is even more interesting. Wasps quickly remember reliable food locations and return to them again and again. But there's another reason a peaceful picnic can suddenly become chaotic. When a wasp is crushed or seriously injured, it releases an alarm pheromone. That invisible chemical spreads through the air within seconds. Nearby wasps detect it immediately. To them, it doesn't smell like danger. It smells like the colony is under attack. That's why swatting at one wasp often makes the situation much worse. The first sting isn't what attracts the others. The chemical signal does. And when thousands of hungry workers are already searching for sugar, one invisible message can turn a quiet backyard into complete chaos. By September, something else has changed. The colony has reached its maximum size. What began in spring with a single queen may now contain several thousand workers. Every one of them is searching for the same thing: sugar. That's why your backyard suddenly feels different. Not because more nests appeared. The same colony has simply grown larger than at any other point in the year. There's another reason they seem to gather so quickly. When a worker finds a rich food source, it leaves behind tiny chemical scent marks. Other workers passing nearby can detect those invisible trails and investigate the same place. One wasp lands on your soda. A few minutes later, there are 10. Not because they're calling each other, because thousands of hungry workers are following the same invisible map. Your backyard didn't change. The colony did. This is where the man with the weed trimmer comes back into the story. Most people picture a wasp nest as a gray paper ball hanging from a tree branch. Sometimes they do build those. But the yellow jackets responsible for most backyard sting incidents usually choose very different places. They move into abandoned rodent burrows, gaps beneath sheds, wall cavities, or small openings hidden under vegetation. You can walk past the entrance dozens of times all summer without noticing it. In June, the colony is still relatively small, and only a few workers are coming and going. From the outside, nothing looks unusual. By September, that same nest has become the largest it will ever be. Thousands of workers may now be packed into a space that looked completely harmless only weeks earlier. Imagine running a weed trimmer just a few feet from the entrance. In June, the vibration might have attracted 1 or 2 guard wasps. In September, it can trigger a very different response. And if even one defending wasp is crushed, it releases an alarm pheromone, a chemical signal that tells nearby workers something is attacking the colony. Instead of one defender, dozens can emerge almost immediately, all responding to the same invisible warning. He didn't change the way he worked. The nest changed underneath him. There's one more reason a wasp nest becomes more defensive in September, and it has nothing to do with sugar. All summer long, the colony has been producing workers, thousands of daughters whose only job was to build, feed, and protect the nest. But as autumn approaches, the queen changes strategy. The last cells she lays no longer produce workers. They produce next year's queens, and the males that will mate with them. Those few young queens are the colony's entire future. Every worker you've seen all summer, even the queen that founded the nest back in spring, will be dead within weeks. Only the newly mated queens have a chance of surviving the winter. From the colony's perspective, protecting them suddenly becomes the highest priority. And that's where the real danger begins. Unlike a honeybee, a yellowjacket doesn't die after stinging. One wasp can sting again and again. In June, disturbing a small colony might bring out 1 or 2 guards. By September, that same nest may contain several thousand workers. Disturb it now, and dozens of wasps can rush out within seconds, each one capable of stinging repeatedly. That's a very different situation from disturbing the same nest earlier in the summer. 1 or 2 stings are painful. A large colony reacting all at once can become a genuine medical emergency, even for people who aren't allergic. That's the part most people never connect to the idea that wasps get worse in late summer. They don't suddenly become meaner. The colony simply has far more to defend. And then, almost as suddenly as it began, it's over. The first hard frost arrives. Within days, the workers disappear. The queen that founded the colony back in spring dies. The enormous paper city that took months to build falls silent. By winter, the nest is nothing more than a fragile shell. Only a handful of young queens remain alive. They mated before the cold arrived, then left the colony one by one, each searching for a dry, sheltered place beneath loose bark, inside a hollow tree, or deep within a narrow crack where freezing temperatures can't quite reach. There, each queen waits alone through the entire winter. When spring finally returns, one of them emerges. She chews weathered wood into paper, builds a few tiny cells, lays the first eggs herself, and feeds the first larvae herself. For weeks, she does everything alone, and from that single survivor, an entirely new colony slowly appears. Which means something remarkable. The wasps at that picnic table, the colony beneath the lawn, the nest hidden beside the shed, weren't preparing for next summer. They were living through the final weeks of this one, protecting the only future they had left. Every huge wasp colony begins exactly the same way, with one lonely queen and one winter survived. None of this makes the wasp your enemy. In fact, it reveals something most people never hear. Scientists have documented wasps visiting hundreds of flowering plant species. Some flowers even depend on wasps to reproduce, including orchids that have evolved to imitate female wasps in order to attract the males. They're also remarkable hunters. All summer long, a single colony removes thousands of caterpillars, flies, beetle larvae, and other insects that would otherwise damage gardens, trees, and crops. The wasp flying through your backyard in June wasn't looking for you. It was hunting the insects that feed on your plants, quietly, every day, without anyone noticing. You only noticed the wasps during the few weeks of the year when they finally started noticing your food. And that's why late summer tells such a misleading story. It isn't showing you what wasps are. It's showing you one brief chapter at the very end of their lives. Knowing all of this doesn't mean you should be afraid of wasps. It simply means you'll see them differently. If you're outside in late August or September, keep sugary food and drinks covered. If a wasp lands nearby, resist the urge to swat at it. Most of the time, it's searching for sugar, not looking for a fight. And before mowing the lawn, trimming weeds, or working around sheds, old tree stumps, retaining walls, or holes in the ground, take a slow walk through the area first. If several wasps keep flying to exactly the same spot, you've probably found the entrance to a nest. Give it space. Don't investigate. By September, that's when a colony is at its largest and at its most defensive. Sometimes the safest decision is simply to walk away. The next time you notice more wasps than usual, you'll know they didn't suddenly become more aggressive. You're seeing a colony at the very end of its life. It has run out of its easiest food, it has reached its greatest size, and it is protecting the only generation that will survive the winter. Within a few weeks, the workers will be gone. The queen that built the nest will die. The paper city that took an entire summer to build will stand empty. Only a handful of young queens will survive, hidden beneath bark, inside hollow trees, or deep within tiny cracks where they'll wait for spring. Then the whole story begins again. One queen, One tiny paper nest, one more hidden city, growing quietly in the background of another summer. If this video changed the way you see wasps, or anything happening in your own backyard, I'd love to hear about it. Have you ever had an unexpected encounter with a wasp nest? Tell me in the comments. I read every one, and many of your stories inspire future Hidden Nature episodes. Subscribe to Hidden Nature, because some of nature's greatest mysteries aren't hidden in distant forests. They're unfolding quietly, just outside your door.